is playing. And I think if I get enough copyright violations, then they get really angry at me. So hang on, boy, it's loading up slowly today. Hope everybody's doing well, and talk amongst yourselves as we get this figured out. Okay, good. Good morning.
Hey Bob, long time no see. How are you?
Yeah. Who was that, Lauren?
I'm well.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks for asking, man. I appreciate it.
Very cool.
I don't know how you talk among yourselves with like 12 people, but anyway, there you go. I'm trying.
On Zoom. It's every talk among yourselves is perfectly public.
Right.
That's funny. Let me see. I want to see if I can show you guys something. This is kind of cool. I can figure out how to work my screen. Our daughter is in Germany on a trip, and so she sent this to us this morning. Can you guys see that? Is anybody there? Can you guys see this video, or did I?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I don't know why I'm not hearing anything. All right, what's that?
We're all on mute.
Oh, I got you. So this was our daughter at the Berlin Wall today in Berlin. They say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Isn't that cool? Oops. I'm sorry, I was going to play it again because I didn't really get it. They say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Isn't that cool?
It's fantastic.
I can't imagine being at the Berlin Wall and celebrating that today. A lot of Ukrainian flags flying there. I saw one of the major Russian tennis players was playing in a tournament yesterday, and his girlfriend was wearing a shirt with Ukrainian colors. Alexander Ovechkin, who's probably one of the best hockey players in the world from Russia, who actually is a big fan of Vladimir Putin. He came out and spoke against the war this week. And so I think in this really sad moment in history, it's exposing us to, I think these are moments where we have to decide who we are. And I think those moments can be blessed. And in some ways, we've seen some people who are stepping up and saying, I'm for Russia because it's Christian, or some other crazy things some have said this week. But I think we're seeing the world say, hey, this is not okay. This is not okay. And we're not going to be okay with this. We've gone that road before. And so, Lauren, you were saying there's some interesting perspective from the European view of this, you guys over in Italy.
Yeah, so this is probably slightly less European as a whole, but we went to a Anglican service today, and I want to preface this by saying this was not in any way this person supporting Russia in the war, but they made a comment that was interesting, and they said when a Christian nation attacks another Christian nation, something to the effect of, we have a problem, and this doesn't look like Christianity. And it was interesting when he said it, because I've only heard that phrasing used to refer to the United States, and he was referring to Russia.
Right.
And when we look at the statements that Putin made before attacking, a large part of his basis for attacking Ukraine was supposedly religious.
Yes.
And the fact that Ukraine and Russia share the same religion, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's an interesting moment of introspection as a fellow country that likes to claim our religious heritage, to go, wow, okay, this is the level at which being a quote unquote Christian country can justify just absolutely horrendous atrocities. And obviously we saw this back in Nazi Germany, right? And they too flew the Christian flag as they did all their atrocities. And yet to see it in our generation, to see it so glaringly and right in front of us is I think a apt wake up call for all of us, especially as, you know, another presidential election comes around and we see people saying the things that they're saying yet again and going, yeah, this whole I'm a Christian nation, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z does not end well. And we're seeing it one more time.
Carol, I see you got your hand up.
I was just going to throw this out in the sense that they were showing on the news a couple of days that there were Russians who were protesting against the war in Russia. And I think that's what we have to, it's like, I just want to make sure that everybody remembers that, it's Putin, and it's not everybody. It's not those people again, even though they're not white. I mean, they're Russians, I mean, we have to really be careful to remind ourselves, wait a minute, this is a mindset that needs to be changed. And most people are not in that same mindset.
I think Paul's stuck on mute, but James, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just on
Sorry,
the
guys.
on the general topic, not necessarily Ukraine, but last night I was on Facebook and I looked at my local newspaper page, and they had an article about Biden's choice for Supreme Court, and a local man who was clearly on the far right, was saying how extremist Biden was and how this shows that he only nominated her because of the color of her skin and she's not qualified. And I just responded, well, you compare that to some of the previous nominations, he certainly is as qualified as they are. And his response was, how can you call yourself an American? And my immediate response was just anger. And I don't usually get angry at people, but that just made me, I really got irate. And what it forced me to do is I just had to stop, go downstairs and say, God, help me to pray for this person. Because, love your enemies is not a suggestion, and so I think a lot of what's going on in the world today is our inability to be able to find compassion for people who are reprehensible. And what really is shocking this morning, I just happened, out of curiosity, went to this guy's homepage, and I was getting ready last night to say, well, I don't know if I'm an American or not because my citizenship's in heaven. I was almost said that, but I decided it was probably smart not to say anything. But I go to his page this morning, and at the top of his page it says, "My home is heaven." So it's just like, I wrote on my personal page, I said, well, I think he's probably going to have to leave some things behind before he enters there, but it's probably true for all of us,
Yeah, true.
It's a shame to see these kinds of things, especially from people of faith.
So way to go, Lauren. You stole a little bit of my thunder. I appreciate it. James, you too. Thank you. Appreciate it. A really quick Google search will reveal that in the mind of perhaps Vladimir Putin and many of the leaders, this is a holy war. This is Christian nationalism, just a Russian brand. That's all it is. And his people really aren't behind him, but if they voice that publicly, they risk a lot. So if this is not a cautionary tale for us, then I really don't know what it's going to take for us to wake up. I had a very, once again, a kind of a famous guy within the stream that I've been involved in texted me some stuff, and it was all about Biden is in the basement. Democrats aren't saved. The whole line that I've been fed my entire life. And I just wrote him back and I said, this type of language from you as a leader ought not to be. It ought not to be. And you really need to be better if you're going to be speaking publicly again. And this dude is so famous. I said, you really need to check yourself a little bit. And then I sent him 3 links talking about the holy war in Russia, how this is all about that. It's empire mixed with cross. And that's all it is. That's all it is. I mean, I'm sure there's more nefarious things beyond that, but this is the driving force. So thanks, Lauren.
At least it's the excuse. And yeah, I'll show you guys another video just of kind of what this looks like from an American perspective. And I'm not going to play this whole thing, but just to see how this kind of works its way into our language and our thought.
Is a Christian nationalist nation. They're actually Orthodox Christian. I'm Russian Orthodox. So, I actually support Putin's right to protect his people and always put his people first, but also protect their Christian values. I identify more with with Putin's Christian values than I do with Joe Biden. There is that. There is that there. Christian nationalist countries also are a threat to the global regime, like the Luciferian regime. It wants to mash that person talking.
So that is a woman that ran for Senate, a Republican that ran for senator in the state of Delaware, saying that she identifies more with Putin than with our president. And Franklin Graham this week came out and said we need to pray for Putin. And to be honest, he was saying pray that he would change his mind, yet still has not come out to say and pray for our president and for wisdom for our leaders. And it's so interesting. My wife and I were invited back to the National Prayer Breakfast in 2014. We met the leader of The Family, if you guys have heard of The Family. That is really Christianity interacting with leaders around the world. And it's just so amazing now what we saw then. And we didn't realize what we were seeing, but how this interaction of Christianity with leaders around the world, and truly any autocrat that said the word Jesus and then passed anti-gay laws was a friend of the family, was a friend to Christians in America. And it's this mindset has worked in. And I'm always reminded, Bob has a good friend named Ahmad, who I've met a couple of times and is a fascinating, brilliant Muslim man. And he, was challenging me with the idea of after 9/11, we made all American Muslims stand up and say, and repudiate that. And so I feel it's fair at this time to say, hey, Christians, will you stand up and repudiate this extremist position in your religion? Or are you going to be silent and thus complicit in some way? And I just think it's really important for us at this time to say, that is not Christian. That is not us. Those are extremists, and scary extremists, that woman. So sorry, I didn't totally mean to go this way today. And I want us to pray for Ukraine. I see Cheryl's hand up. Cheryl.
Hey, I just wanted to comment on that TikTok video and my local news. I also read an article and was reading the comments where I live. And one of the first commenters said, let's stop worrying about other people's borders and worry about our southern border that we're not protecting. And then, of course, everybody jumped on that bandwagon. And there were, of the 80 comments, there were maybe 3 or 4 that were pro, Ukrainian, saying, hey, stop, we need to pray for these people. But mostly it was attacking Joe Biden and attacking the fact that we just need to mind our own business, and that as if we're being invaded by Mexico, as if they're bringing tanks trying to take over our country. It's ridiculous. But after I read that, I didn't say anything, of course, because I'd be crucified. But after I read that, I watched that whole TikTok video. So I watched the part where she said, if you're a Christian, girlfriend, you need to stand up and say something. And I thought, I really thought so much about that last night, because I thought, I don't feel brave enough. And then that makes me feel really guilty. But I just feel like I'm not brave enough to write a comment back. Maybe not yet, but I don't know. That's hard to admit because I feel like a coward, but I'm really afraid of the backlash. I really am. I've had just a bumper sticker on my car one time and I had to take it off because I got road raged. Somebody tried to run me off the road. All it said was Dems 2020. It wasn't even. So anyway, I'm a coward. I admit it. I'm sorry.
Well, there's a couple of other hands went up, so I'll see what encouragement others have for you, and then I'll throw some in. Lauren and Charity.
No, I was just gonna say, so there's coward and then there's wisdom.
Yes.
And responding to angry people at the bottom of a news article is probably not exercising wisdom. And I mean, a lot of the faces I'm seeing on this screen have been extremely vocal online, but we're all having to exercise caution of where is it worth putting the energy, for one, where it's not throwing pearls before swine, and two, where is it safe? And I mean, there's people who I tried to dialogue with, and eventually I had to say, you are not safe. You're not safe for my psyche, and had to block them and just cut off dialogue. And so, yeah. So Cheryl, I just want to encourage you in that choosing that it's not wisdom to engage a specific location is not being a coward. That may just be wisdom. That said, if you feel like God is calling you to step out and say something, look for where's the forum to say that, where's a place that is safe and that will hear you and benefit from it, as opposed to just having one more thing to be angry about.
That's good, Lauren. James.
Yeah, I think I was going to say much the same. Just going to add that at some point you have to think about your own Christian witness and whether what you're saying really has any eternal value. I mean, I used to argue a lot with people that was operating under the mistaken belief that a logical, well-researched answer made a difference. In reality, when you're dealing with ideology, it's meaningless. So I think, for the most part, all you can do is you can say, this is what I believe, or point to a fact. And then if the person doesn't respond positively, you just leave it at that, because it's the pearls before swine. I'm not saying that they're swines, but that it's a worthless cause. So
yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, Cheryl, and I just echo what everybody else has said. I always like the portion in the Bible where John the Baptist is calling out Herod for being married to his mother-in-law, and John got beheaded, and Jesus didn't go before Herod and start screaming about him being married to his mother-in-law, and kept his head. I think we've got to know, I really believe when I read that in the Bible, John had stepped into something that he wasn't necessarily called to, or maybe he was supposed to be a martyr, but Jesus didn't join him in that protest. So it's not always our space. We got to know what is our place in our space to speak out. And yes, I think Lauren said it well. If God is challenging you to step out into something that's a little scary, then go for it. But if it's not your space, it's not your space. And we don't have to take on something that's not ours to take on. Brenda, you want to say something?
Oh, you kind of said a little bit of what I was thinking, but I've been really wrestling for the last 2 or 3 years about just what is an appropriate action for just a single private citizen. For me as a teacher who has charges, for all these things, what are appropriate avenues? Because some, what is it? I'm going to badly quote, but basically that all evil needs for thriving is for, good people to do nothing. And so what is the appropriate level of doing that reaches some critical mass that causes change. And, so I took a walk this morning, and half of it was praying, God, what do you want from me? What's an appropriate place for me? And the commitments I have and the time that I have and all those things, what's appropriate response? And I don't believe yelling on Facebook is really the best way to go. But then where is it that in my, the fingers of my influence, what can I do? And it's, I'm not sure I have a hard answer just yet. But I know one thing that has been lurking in my mind more recently is, as I've been praying this, is, well, there's certainly need in Fresno, as anybody who lives in the Central Valley knows. And is there just some place to plug in that just takes care of somebody's need? I can't change Ukraine that I know of. But anyway, it's just, it's been a heart wrestle for me for a while. Black Lives Matter, all these things. So anyway, I understand that I'm with you, Cheryl, in always not always feeling brave, because I'm not a very public person. I'm a very private person, actually, by personality. So anyway, my 3 cents worth.
Very good. I think we all have a pond to throw a rock in, and create waves. Who do we have influence with? Who do we have the ability to say, hey, this is what I feel strongly about? And how does it have ripple effect to who they influence and they influence it? So just know where your pond is to throw your rock, I say. And usually I think if we do that fairly faithfully, then other doors open to other spaces, and we just keep walking wherever the door opens. So, but Cheryl, I think you voiced very, very well for some of us, like, it's scary and it's going to cost me. And so we have to know when it's time to do that cost. And I've even read a lot about Martin Luther King. He really had to wrestle with, do I want to do this, or can I just be a really good pastor of a really good church and impact people's lives? And we've got to know, where we go. So let's do pray for Ukraine quick, and Bob's going to share something here. But who would like to pray for this situation? We could have several voices just say a short prayer or encouragement or blessing or thought. Just jump in, somebody.
I
I'd like to,
Go for it.
I would like to, God, I just pray for the wisdom that world leaders need, and wisdom that the people in the various countries influencing their leaders need, and the courage that we've just been talking about to say what we need to say and do what we need to do. But I just pray for wisdom. God, you weave all of the threads of our history together in a way that we cannot see now. And the world has certainly lived through worse. But Father, we just pray that this does not become part of the worst, that lives will be rescued, and but mostly, God, that you would give wisdom to the people who are listening to you to act in the way that they need to influence the situation, protect the innocent in Ukraine.
Heavenly Father, we do pray for Ukraine. We pray for the refugees who've been forced out of there and are in tenuous situations as far as their shelter and worrying about the loved ones that they've left behind. I thank you for the kind people in Poland and other nations who are welcoming them in. Pray that this will be just a temporary refugee situation. Do pray that that there would be peace there in Ukraine. I pray that this would come back to maybe some positive good would come out of this. Perhaps Putin would lose his power in Russia in some way, that you'd bring some positive good out of this. But we pray for the protection of innocent people there who are being attacked without cause. And we do pray for unity, even in our country, for people that seem to admire authoritarianism. I pray that they would recognize how evil it is.
Father, I thank you for the forthcoming peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, God. And I pray that you would surround those with protection, God, that you would divinely keep anybody who wishes to do malfeasance to that event from messing with it, God, that it would work as expected. And Father, I pray for peace in that room, and I pray for creativity. God, the more I understand of these two countries, the more it's clear they both have things that they're scared of and things that they want and demands they want to issue. And Father, I pray that you would somehow give these negotiators creativity to find solutions that can actually work and that people can live with, and that we can again have peace in our region here.
Yeah, and Bob, you have something to share along these lines.
I do. I'm struck by, and this is just off the top of my head, but I actually have something. But the fact that Russia and Ukraine, they're like cousins. I mean, they're the same. They just are, and different political systems, but they're the same. This would be like us attacking Canada, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. This would be like us saying, we just don't like the way, the trucker convoys. We don't like the way Trudeau handled the trucker convoys up there. So we're just going to go and set that country straight. How insane and asinine would that be? I mean, it's just completely insane. But Paul, I want to speak to something that you talked about, the collective guilt of the Muslims after 9/11. I've been honored to teach by Zoom at a college in Texas for the last few weeks, and with their administration. And there was a woman this week who I knew just an inkling of her story. So I asked her to share a bit. She grew up in Israel for the first 26 years of her life, and she has spent the second 26 years here in the United States. Married, children, the whole gamut. But the kick for her is she was Palestinian and a Muslim. She was raised in Islam in Israel. And that's 20% of the population over there, by the way. And so she faced misunderstanding in her homeland. She faced misunderstanding here. And she was here when 9/11 happened. And she talked about suddenly feeling fear because she looks very Middle Eastern. And she knew that she was going to have to be proactive to make sure that she capitulated enough for people who already knew her. So Paul, you're 100% right. And if we expected that out of them, then my gosh, at some point, doesn't the church have to stand up? Doesn't the church have to stand up and begin to take responsibility for this? But I digress. How many of you have ever been to a McDonald's?
A few times.
You bunch of weirdos. Okay, listen to me. I was privileged to launch a book a couple of years ago with a couple of other folk. And one of the launch points was in Dallas. And I met this man who he's a restaurant executive, and he has opened restaurants around the world. And he talked about this thing that I'd never heard of before called Crave items. Has anybody ever heard of Crave items? Every restaurant, every major restaurant, every chain for sure has a Crave item. Something that when you see it, when you see those golden arches, there is something that almost always pops into almost everyone's head. What is it? What is it?
Big Mac. French fries.
It's the
Fries.
fries.
Yeah.
It's the fries. That is their crave item. You can smell it outside of a McDonald's. We live real close to an In-N-Out burger. There's one just right down the street from us. And there are times that we'll go out in our backyard and that smell wafts over of those double doubles. And it's like, it causes you to salivate. There's a psychological reaction that happens when you start thinking about McDonald's fries. Now, this guy happened to be opening a TGI Fridays at the point, and there's a rib item, whiskey barbecue, or I don't know what it is, but something like that. That's their crave item. Every main restaurant has a crave item, and it's psychological to get you to just crave their food. So I started thinking about that. Cheryl, I love what you shared. I love what you shared. Just as much as Lauren stole all my thunder, you restored all of it. So I just want to say thank you, because this is what I want to talk about. Who are we on this earth? And how can we get people to crave what we have? How do we get people to crave what we have? Right? That's the key. And so what do we have that's worth craving? I know a lot of folks that are church folk that really are Christians that I don't crave I started to cuss. I'm sorry. I don't crave a thing from them. I watch and I think, I don't want to be like them. I just don't. I don't want to be that person who is out speaking condemnation over other people. I don't want to be that person that sets himself up as the judge and the jury. Instead, I think we ought to look, and this is for social media. This is Cheryl. This applies. This applies. I don't argue much on social media these days because it's a fool's errand. You're arguing with people that's all they want to do. They don't care about solutions. They care about the fight. And so, it's like wrestling with a pig. I mean, it's not a good idea because you're just going to get dirty and the pig likes it, right? So we don't want to do that. So these days, I try a different approach. There's a friend of mine who I went to Bible college with, he just put an incendiary thing on Facebook. And so all I said to him was, so what do you think that scripture means? And he responded with some crazy whatever. And I have not even responded, because my next step will be, hey, you and I ought to Zoom together privately. That's how I do things. I'm going to step in a different way. I'm not looking to embarrass anybody. I'm not looking to say that my way is better. I'm not looking for gotcha moments. I am looking to heal the planet, the end. And if I'm a follower of Jesus, that's my job. I carry healing in these hands, right? So what are the crave items? What are the crave items? I'm going to tell you. It's got to be something along the lines of Galatians 5. That's the fruit of the Spirit. Let me tell you what our crave items are, and then let's do a personal inventory and find out where we are. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, which means patience, kindness. There's one. Goodness, faithfulness, being faithful, gentleness, being gentle. Arguing on social media is anything but, right? And self-control. It says, against these things, there is no law. Well, of course there is no law, because this is the stuff. This is who we're called to be. So as I was pondering what to share this morning, this is the stuff. So I'd like to have this conversation. I'd like to open up the room a little bit. Let's talk about those things that we see that we crave. And let's talk about how we can become our own personal crave item to the world. Who's got some thoughts?
Hey, Bob. Hey, you guys. I crave practicality. I crave, oh boy, how do I put it? Effectiveness. This is different. When I look back at the ministry of Jesus and 12 apostles and how his following grew and grew and grew, this was all new stuff to them. This is stuff that haven't heard before, definitely not from the Pharisees. So go forward 2,000 years, and we've had 2,000 years to meditate on this, to chew on this, and we have reached a point where we are able to manifest this in our lives like no other generation before. And I think that that is part of the deconstruction movement, is to finally say, let's be authentic about this, even if we don't agree what it means. But like with every movement where you are moving towards this light, this comprehension, there is a pushback of another movement. It could be the establishment. But whatever it is, the two are going to bump heads. Which craves it more? Do we crave this this height? I'm sorry, that's arrogant. This higher level of understanding, or are we so terrified of the change it requires that we will fight it with every breath? Right now, the establishment is the fear. What they crave: control, supremacy, delusion, craving delusion. That's, I hate to say it, it's stronger than the smaller group who's craving something else. I crave a practical approach to this, not telling anybody how to deconstruct, because it is such a personal experience, but trying something to penetrate the madness, to penetrate the fear of the extreme, to penetrate the comfort of being a moderate, well, where that moderate group says, well, it'll all work out, one side, the other side, just going to sit back and let things play out. There has to be, I'm not saying there is a way that will bring success, but I crave contemplation of new strategies, trying something different. If it doesn't work, that's okay. But not sitting back and just thinking about my journey, my deconstruction, my revelation, my personal growth, but a plea to our tribe to consider something different, because everything is at stake. The gospel is at stake. And I hate to say win or lose, but whoever wins this, whoever comes on top, will determine how the gospel is interpreted for a long time.
That's good, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's really funny. And I'm going to get to Audra and Amy in just a second. So to me, I've got a very close relative. She's older, and I remember a dozen years or so, her neighbor blew leaves off of his lawn, and some of them got on her lawn. She called the police. This is someone who, walks with God, supposedly. And so when she told me the story, I asked her point blank, I said, so I know you're really good about sharing your faith with others. How do they respond when you say, don't you want what I have, after you've called the police on them for leaves in the yard? Guys, people are watching us. They want to know who we are. are we any different from the rest of them? And we have to be. And I'm finding out as I live my life, the kinder I am, the more kindness I show, the more people want what I have. It's just how it works. If I come in with a hammer, nobody wants what I have. Nobody wants it. Audra, what you got?
Well, going back to what you had said before, talking about what people are looking for in Christianity, and you were, I forget now, Wall, exactly what you said. It was a while ago. But yeah, basically what you were just saying, it sounds like what you're talking about with the fruits of the spirit is just kill them with kindness. When talking to people about politics and whatnot, people have already decided what their opinions are. When you talk about things like which side of the aisle you're on, about overseas wars, about abortions, it's pretty rare to have a genuine conversation where someone is open-minded. And when you turn it into a debate, they dig their heels in. There's a defensiveness there because what their opinions are based upon is usually some form of faith, even if not religious faith. But being kind and gently telling them how you disagree, but then without engaging in a debate, I think can be so important to de-radicalize someone who's gone a bit too far off some kind of end. But I think that as important a discussion as that is, it's getting a little bit off track because of, I think we had started at, hey, and I said that at the chat. I think we had started at where do we go? Like what good can we accomplish when there is so much ill going on in the world? And when is speaking out fruitful? I think that it comes down to, I don't know, this is something that was said in church a long time ago that actually stuck with me. They've said something about preach to the masses, but invest in a few. And you gotta pick out your energy where you can. And remember that in big systems of power, what individuals do is often, I'm not trying to be discouraging, but it's often much less important. When looking at the Ukraine situation, I think thinking, how can I affect the war is like probably a little too much there, but rather when you see someone who's unintentionally probably being like racist or fascist or something, that's when you can talk to them. And maybe by pulling them away from that edge, you could maybe prevent a hate crime or something down the road. Who knows? I'm sorry. I think I kind of lost the plot there a little bit.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Those are wonderful, wonderful thoughts. Y'all know, by the way, Amy, here we go. I love your shirt, by the way. Yeah. Mr. Rogers is my hero for those of you who haven't heard me talk about him 5 million times. I'm literally Mr. Rogers on Twitter, if you ever want to check it out. So that is my hero. I have a literal shrine. I don't bow to it, but I have a shrine in my home to the things of Mr. Rogers. That's my hero, guys. All right, Amy, what you got?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I might ramble too, so I'm sorry, but I'm going to let everybody know that I'm here as a representative of the unchurched. I don't necessarily currently identify as a Christian, so I'm speaking from, I think, maybe a unique perspective in a Christian space. was raised Christian. Still, to quote the late Rachel Held Evans, the story of Jesus is one that I'm still very willing to be wrong about. So I spend a lot of time, unfortunately, on the interwebs, specifically on TikTok, speaking about the PR problem that Christians have, which is, for me, a pastime. But there really is a problem with how Christians are perceived in the unchurched or the lost perception. And to go back to what Paul said at the beginning, is that, everybody gets so hung up on doctrine that they forget the fruits of the Spirit, which are the ways in which, if you want to use evangelical language, the way you're going to win people to living like Christ. The greatest example that I ever had of Christ's love, and I realized that I'm biased, was my own father. And people craved what he had. And he never proselytized. He didn't spend a whole lot of time flying banners or talking politics or doctrine or even dogma. He just lived, and people saw something different in him. And he led with kindness and joy and compassion. And that was a wonderful example that I still hold true to be the way that Christians will win people to Christ. And I think that modern Christianity has completely lost sight of that. And that's why so many people who were raised in it, like I was, and we're not I wasn't just a kiddie pool Christian. I was deep in there. Ex-husband was a youth pastor, and we were in ministry 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So I've seen this kind of deteriorate over the last, I would say, 15 years. Christians have gotten away from the message of love, and I experience it viscerally. When you speak out about people just wanting to exist, you get a lot of hate. And now I've lost sight of things. I think what it boils down to is that someone else said it. I think Bob, cross and country are too intertwined, and it's scary. And it's not something I really want to be a part of. But you mentioned Galatians. When I read that passage, Galatians 5, that is something I'm still very interested in being a part of. And to encourage, I'm so sorry, I think it was Brenda. I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but that you're afraid. Oh my goodness, that breaks my heart for you, because that means that you're not living your true faith out loud and feeling like you can do that without being condemned by the people who seem to share your faith. And I think from the perspective of the unchurched, it would mean so much if people who felt like the people in this room do, when people are loud and nasty and sunk in and teeth bared with doctrine, if you would speak up against them. And it makes a difference. Like a couple weeks ago, Hey Brian was trending on Twitter because this guy was talking about how women can't exist and have their bodies on the internet because it was a stumbling block to their brothers. And that thread was so full of Christians coming to this guy, some of them very viciously, but others came to him in love and showed what it really is supposed to be about. So I think that there is importance. You cannot, as a Christian, go and stop the war against the Ukraine, the Russia and the Ukraine conflict. We can't, but you can speak up against the rhetoric that's coming from the Christian right and say, that's not Jesus. You do have that power. And I said in the chat that the cost and the loss come to a net gain. And you will be able to live authentically. And I think that there's something to be won there. And when I encounter people like Pastor Paul, it's a relief to know that, I'm in Texas and almost everyone around me thinks like that woman that was saying she identifies with Putin more than Biden, almost everyone around me. So my society of Christian peers is not what I want to deal with at all. So I think it's very important to place yourself at risk, to use evangelical language again. Maybe it is your cross to bear, to stand up and speak out against it and lose whatever status or community you may have, because you have to ask yourself, is this the community that I really want to be a part of? And if Jesus were hanging out right next to me, I'm going to use the lesson that I got in youth group, like if Jesus was walking into this room with me, hearing what I'm saying, would he hold my hand and stand with me? So sorry, I feel like I rambled some, but thanks for letting me speak.
No, well done. Proverbs 31:8-9 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. And then it tells you who they are: the poor, the destitute, the misunderstood. It says, speak up and defend the rights of the poor and needy. You're not going to hear that in a lot of evangelical churches today, because that's not a popular thing. And James, I'm going to come to you right now. Paul, I don't know what you want to do, because we're going to run out of time before.
That's good stuff. I was just going to say, Amy just quoted Acts 2:42 through 45, which is the original church, like had miracles happening, had wonderful stuff. They ate together.
Mm-hmm.
They made sure anybody with need had what they needed.
Yep.
And God added to their number daily. There was no need for a growth program, outreach, no bounce houses for the kids, just their generosity and love for one another, and the joy that came out of it drew people to them. That's when I hear you say crave. What is our crave that we're offering to the world? They ought to be able to look at our community and say, wow, they love each other so much and take care of each other so much. I want to be into that. And they love others. And so I heard Amy saying that and thought that was brilliant.
Love that.
Amy, I want to go to your church.
There you go. Listen, go ahead. Yeah, Amy, it was fantastic. You've all heard the phrase show and tell. What if this life has been less about tell and more about show? I mean, seriously, don't tell me, just show me. I'm going to look at you anyway and see who you are. Don't tell me. James, what do you got?
Since we're running out of time, I see Kelly's hands up. Why don't you go to her?
Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi. So I just wanted to quickly say, that, yeah, we have to speak up. And, since 2016, when things really got crazy, I honestly started hiding my opinions on Facebook and just started sharing them with a group of people who thought like me, because I got tired of getting attacked by so-called friends and family members, and just constantly having to be in discussion with people who could not or would not be even rational about some of the stuff they were saying. And today I broke that for the first time by sharing Paul's, and there was a stitch with it, and it was about, the person who was talking about the person who was on TV saying, oh yeah, Putin is a Christian, and I identify with Putin more than Biden. And I thought, this makes me just sick to my stomach to listen to this. And I had some very evangelical family members, and I thought, I don't care. I'm putting it on there. I'm going to put it on my Facebook page and say, listen, people, you better start speaking up. So that was just all I wanted to say. So I finally broke away from my fear and started talking again.
Super brave. Paul, take it, man.
Yeah, well, let's go to communion, and Carol's going to lead us in communion before we go to community here.
Well, I kind of had a little thing, but I just kind of want to keep us pretty much in the same vein of where we were today, of just the reality of it was when you were talking about all the kindness When we come to communion, it's all about, what's the word, communing. And that's what we just did. I mean, the only thing that's missing is eating, is coming to bed together and breaking bread. That's what we did. The Amy was talking about, how it's, simplifying things. And one of my favorite sayings is KISS, keep it simple, saint, right? Keep it simple. If you're trying to decide what to do, because when you were talking to me, Bob, you were talking to us about all those things and, which one do we want to work on and all that. And I just got, again, it's the whole pizza syndrome. I was like, oh my gosh, there's all of them I want to work on. Every one of them I want to be better at. But I look at it and I go, wait a minute, keep it simple, saint. Just remind ourselves that if we're not in the vein of one of those when we speak, when we walk, when we're in our jobs, when I'm dealing with all the stuff that I'm dealing with at home right now, then that's when I have to go, oh, that's it. That's the whole Bible right there. Right there. That's it. That sums up the law and the prophet as far as I'm concerned. It's just every one of those. If I could do all of those, then that's where I need to be. All throughout the last year online, we had to do these character things. And it was all about being kind. And I've learned that kindness is an action. That's really what it's all about. So, like I said, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it simple. And so let's go ahead and take our elements. Mine happens to be, I try really hard not to drink this, but this is my communion. It's my wine, gosh darn it. And don't give me any slack or flack for it, because they just got rid of there's a real bad thing here, BPA, and they just got rid of it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's as good to me as Coca-Cola. So lay off. Okay, so take your elements, and I have a graham cracker. So in other words, it really doesn't matter. And I love the freedom of being me. One of the things I was going to say today, I always find myself when Paul says, hey, can you do this? I start getting religious, and I run to scripture and I want to sound so smart, but you know what? It's going to bring tears to my eyes, because I'm finding on this journey, this whole journey of where everybody else is going in fear and all of this crazy stuff these last 10 years. I'm finding on this journey that being me is exactly what my God, the presence, wants from me. To be myself, and I want to be known as a follower of the ways of Jesus. And I think that's, for me, that's where I'm at. So let's keep it simple. God, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for being the very present for us by being in your presence. I love using those symbolisms there. You're just so wonderful. And I want to be a part of you because you want to be a part of me. And that's really what it's all about. So thank you for this time. Thank you for these friends. And thank you for this beautiful ability, this online ability to be able to commune with people that are around the world, and that we can come together and love you in whatever shape or form that looks like. Amen.
Well, that was perfect, Carol. Perfect. I love this today, because I think there are times when we just need to be together, processing where we're going, what we're doing, and what we're living through. It has been a few years of just shared cultural trauma for us, I think. And so being able just to process together. And I do think it's what communion is about, that Jesus didn't say, I'm looking forward to taking these implements with you guys. He said, I couldn't wait to be here with you. And oh, by the way, we'll take communion together in the middle of it, but being together is what communion is about. So I love you guys. And I wish we were in a room, like Lauren was saying in the chat, that we could just hug it out together. But virtually, I give a hug to all of you for being with you today. My spirit is connected with you in this. Yeah. All right, let's do some community time. You guys may feel like we've already done it some today, but Lauren and Charity, see you, Carol. If you want to put us into rooms, we'll hang out together for a bit. Thank you, Bob, for sharing today.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Excellent.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
I will open the rooms and have a great week, everyone.
Ciao.
Love you.